The 2015 Silver Gavel Award for newspapers goes to Till Death Do Us Part, the Post and Courier, Charleston, South Carolina.
He was Mr. Charm at first, and then he turned out to be Mr. Harm.
Everyone in the community loved him. He had so many friends. He could have had it all, but he chose, by virtue of his own actions, to throw it all away.
He told me that he loved them and, he would never do anything to hurt him.
Everybody saw Dr. Jekyll. I was the only one that saw Mr. Hyde.
And then a month later, everything started changing.
What prompted us to develop Till Death Do Us Part? Well, it started in the fall of 2013 when the Violence Policy Center in Washington, D.C. came out with its annual rankings of the deadliest states for women at the hands of men, and South Carolina was ranked number one in the nation for the third time in a 10-year period. It got us to talking about, why was this so? What was driving this sort of thing? Our murder rate for women in 2013, the year we were named number one in the country, was double that, more than double that of the nation. We had lost more women to domestic homicides here than the number of soldiers from South Carolina lost in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. It was just a staggering death toll. Over 300 women had died in that time. The first formal interview that Doug Pardue and Jennifer Hawes did, they went to a women's shelter in town here in Charleston and was talking to the director and asking, why is the state so bad? And she reeled off a whole list of reasons, starting with the traditionalist, patriarchal Southern gun culture that we have here. And then she stopped suddenly and said, well, there's also that religion thing. And they asked, what religion thing? And she replied to them, well, till death do us part. And I think they both looked at each other and said, boy, that's the series title right there. We wanted to really get at all the various factors driving domestic violence, the legal, the political, the economic, and the cultural. And the legal portions was huge. It can't be understated. I mean, how our criminal justice system deals with folks who have been arrested for criminal domestic violence. Nobody really kept track of that in our state. Most of the cases are handled in the misdemeanor courts. We found out in some areas, including our own, we were looking at 60% of these cases being dismissed before they went to trial. The reform effort really grew out of the series. About a couple days after the series ran, the Speaker of the House, citing the series, appointed a committee to look into ways that the state could possibly address this problem. Just recently, the governor signed the final bill. It wasn't everything that everybody had hoped for, but it accomplished probably more than had been done in over a decade in terms of domestic violence reform. It stiffened penalties, provided some additional money for education in the classrooms, enacted the gun ban on domestic violence offenders possessing firearms, which mirrors the federal law, and does a number of other things that hopefully will add some better protections for women out there. What would I say to someone who's never read Till Death Do Us Part? It's an eye-opening example of one state's struggles with a silent epidemic that has claimed hundreds of lives. It crosses all sorts of social and economic levels and can occur just about anywhere, and it's often viewed as a problem best dealt with in the home and not discussed in outside society. But I think the end result shows that when that happens and it isn't discussed, then women die.
Accepting the Silver Gavel is Jennifer Berry Hawes, reporter.
Well, first, I'd just like to thank the Bar Association and the Silver Gavel Awards in particular. It's a tremendous honor, and it's somewhat embarrassing to admit that this whole project really did begin with a press release that came across our desks one morning from the Violence Policy Center, noting that South Carolina was #1 in the nation in domestic murders. And quite frankly, in South Carolina, we are often used to being at the bottom of lists you want to be at the top of, and at the top of lists you want to be at the bottom of. So it really wasn't hugely striking to us. But what we quickly found was victim after victim after victim's family with these just heartbreaking stories. One of the men you saw speaking in that video, his stepfather shot and killed his mother and all 4 of his siblings while he was away at college. Another one, a teenage girl, her father killed her mother in their mini-mart while she was a teenager and she was on the phone. And you start to really feel the impact of these stories, and also to realize some things about our state, such as that at the time, we had 1 woman in the South Carolina Senate. So when these bills were getting voted upon, there was 1 woman sitting there in the Senate. I am proud to say that after the series ran, the General Assembly passed a reform bill, which, while not perfect, did have some important provisions. It had increased penalties for abusers, and it also had a gun provision in it that was extremely controversial. It took some gun ownership rights away from the worst abusers. And if you know anything about South Carolina, you know that the Second Amendment is very, very cherished there. And so the fact that that passed at all, we felt like was a huge accomplishment. And hopefully the start of more to come. So I want to thank you. I hope that this keeps this issue in the forefront in our state and elsewhere, so that victims can be kept safer. So I thank the Bar Association. Thank you, all of you, very much. I don't think I can say much other than what Glenn said. He did such a fantastic job, but thank you.